Hey, welcome back to Crimes and Closets. This is Christy in my closet in St. Louis.
And this is Beth in my closet in North Carolina.
Happy Monday, Beth.
Happy Monday, Christy.
Week 2, serial killers, right?
Yeah. Yes. I tell you what, man. People were shocked by Kelly.
Well, they should have
nobody
been.
had heard of her.
Nope. Yeah. She's a piece, that one.
Yep. POS.
Yeah. While we're on the topic, we've been on the topic for about 5 seconds, but while we're on the topic, we are going to do a live, people.
Yes, people.
At the end of the month on September
25th.
I'm glad you remembered the date because I was about to open my calendar. Because Beth will be in the loo.
I know. We keep talking about it, but now we're actually in the month. Man,
Yes.
I've been bad about my countdown. I normally do like at least a 30-day.
Right.
Which I did send 1 or 2, I feel like, to you guys.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You did send a 30-day, but you haven't sent, I don't think, since, honestly.
Yeah. I don't know how many days it is from now, but woohoo!
Well, yes. So she'll be in the loo, and so we decided to do another live since we'll be together to kind of close out serial killer. So it'll be the day the last one drops.
Which is Monday.
The 25th. And that evening we will get on live on probably YouTube, I would imagine. Yeah. And just chat about it. You can ask questions if you want, or you can send us questions in advance, I guess.
Oh, that's fun.
In case somebody can't get on there and figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we'll be on
questions about serial killers, questions about whatever.
Yeah, anything. So
yeah. We're going to have a lot to say.
7 p.m.
I don't think we set a time, but 7's great. 7 Central, right?
Central.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Also, while we're talking about business, we have a Patreon. Sandy joined our closet over there. So thank you so much, Sandy. Welcome in.
Yes. Welcome, Sandy. Thank you.
We love it. We've got survivors over there. We talk about it all the time. They're fantastic. One already, that was a crazy one. I have to tell you guys, Christy was the first survivor. It came out September 1st. Yeah, so it was the first thing to drop for the September extravaganza. And her case that she did is the most, I don't even know how to word it.
It's shocking.
Interesting and shocking of all of the cases that we do all of September here on this feed and on the Patreon. The most.
It's probably true. Somebody commented on the Patreon saying that she's never audibly gasped.
Yeah.
Like at a case. And this one she did.
That's right. Yes. It is literally a real survivor story if there ever was one in such a big way. Like Judy Malinowski vibes as far as like the things that this survivor went through. Great case. So if you ever are interested in Patreon, now's the time. Okay. I want to talk to you about something really quick. So there's a new season of The Bachelor. I know you love The Bachelor. You and your friends love The Bachelor. You do Bachelor nights. Okay. I am telling you right now, I am committing to you that I will watch this season.
Yes!
Because I'm going to tell you, it is, and you could probably speak more to this, the Golden Bachelor. So it's older folks.
Yes.
Not these like young and everyone looks the same. Sorry, no offense. I know they're not, but it is like that. If you've seen one season, you've seen them all. That's how I feel about it. 100%. Yes. They're all the same. Not this one. I saw interviews with some of these women. Love them. Love them so much. Like it's giving me, I watch Desperate Housewives and Sister Wives. Clearly I like older reality shows with people who are not young. This is my season. I commit to you that I will be giving this Bachelor season a try, and you can text me every Monday night because I'm going to watch.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm so sad now that when you're here is like literally you leave the day before it starts. Otherwise you could have been here for the...
Oh wait, is it not on Monday nights?
Well, the first one's on Thursday.
Oh, that is a bummer.
I'm wondering if they switched it because it'll be like Monday Night Football season. And so they don't want to compete with that, is what I'm guessing. Sense. But there's also Thursday night games, so I don't know.
I'm actually excited about it, and I just wanted to share this with you. I've been waiting to tell you this since last week. I made the decision within myself that I was going to be joining you for this season of The Bachelor. I feel like we're probably going to talk about it on the podcast. So
I'm so
at least
excited.
on Patreon. So
he is 7 years old or something like that. Like he's in his 70s, and all the women I follow this account called Bachelor at Windmill. And I'm going to send you one of their posts, but they posted recently like all of the people with their names, but they were going off of like an interview, I think, like that was just giving snippets of them. And so they were screenshotting when their face and their name and age were on the screen. And some of them, I was like, who decided to totally screw these people up and with the faces that they were making? Because some of them were like, because they were just like taking screenshots when the name popped up, and it didn't matter what face. And it's just
it's like you taking our snippets and sending it to me, and we always look so crazy when we record. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. So anyway,
okay, well there it is. Christmas came early.
I know, best gift ever.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I wanted to tell you.
All right. Well, if that's all you got, then I guess we can dive into this next serial killer.
Oh, let's do that.
Here we go. Hey friends, we just wanted to hop back on here to acknowledge the fact that today is September 11th. And we all know what that means, and we all have certain feelings about it. I don't know if Beth has anything that...
Well, I think it's just a very, like being in the U.S., we have a very distinct memory in our lifetime of the happenings of that day. We all know where we were. Yes. We all know what we were doing, and we all know what we felt when we learned what was actually happening. And it was impactful for all of us. It was traumatic for all of us. And it's still traumatic for a lot of people. So we wanted to acknowledge it because this episode is dropping on that day.
Right. And I don't know that it's ever dropped on the actual day. And I don't know, it just hit us to make sure that we acknowledge it. And being from New York and being there when it happened, I don't know, it hits a little bit differently, I'm sure, for different people, but I grew up in New York. I have a lot of friends that were in the building at the time. My best friend's father was in the building at the time and didn't make it out. And I just remember that time being just, I don't know, I don't even know if I can explain it, like going home from work every day and going straight to her house to call hospitals and just be there and wondering where he is. And then the day that it happened, Emery not being able to get in touch with me because all the cell towers were down. And like, anyway, it's
just, he wasn't in New York at the time, right?
He wasn't. He was in Wisconsin still. So anyway, our thoughts and prayers are always with the families of people who perished, the survivors of the people who were there that day, because I can't even imagine what your memories are like. If my memories are as vivid as they are, being somewhat removed from it. I was there, but I wasn't there. So anyway, our thoughts and prayers are with everyone today, and we just wanted to acknowledge that, I guess.
That's right. Yes. And thank you for sharing that. And to the first responders and to anyone who risked their lives to help with the aftermath or the math that was going on as it was happening. Like, we appreciate you. We see you. We acknowledge you and your life. And we as a podcast definitely want to just remember. We just want to remember. Our country is at this point built on that. There was a before and after. This is the after. And it matters, and we care, and we love anyone who was involved or anyone who was impacted or traumatized or just anyone who has a memory. So happy Patriots Day. We love you.
100%. We love you. Okay. Thank you for listening. Beth, I cannot believe that we are this into Serial Killer September. I know it's only second week, but we're like
week 2.
We're in it.
In it. Let's see if we win it.
We will. We do. We always do. Anyway.
We nail him.
Yeah. I do have to say that researching this person was just a bit more fun than usual.
Okay. Well, because serial killers are not fun.
No, they're not fun. I mean, researching murder in general is not fun, but sometimes you just like, I think it's just so interesting and fascinating that you just like, you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
And so it feels like it's a fun experience. So that's really.
It's so different for us too.
Yeah.
To like talk about murders because it's just not our focus. We never hyper focus on the killer, and serial killers we do have to do that, which is why we
unless it's a situation where like that's the only person we know information of because of the circumstances. But yeah, we try to typically victimize it or not victimize it. You know what I mean? Is that the word?
Our format is victim centric.
Victim centric.
Yeah.
Big words. Big words.
Yeah. Well, I have brain power because I'm not.
You got rid of yours.
Yeah.
So I say she's fun because although she did do some heinous crimes, they're just not. I'm thinking they're not as gruesome as others, but it still is. But it's just not like, as
like Kelly Cochran last week.
Yeah. Like
Understood.
the possibility of like eating this person. Yeah. No. So anyway, this week we are discussing Dorothea Puente.
Oh, Puente.
Yes.
It's unfortunate. Dorothea is a really pretty name.
It is, because every time I typed it, I was like saying it in my head. And I'm like, that's so pretty. I wish it was used more. But she was suggested to us by Kaylee over on Facebook.
Oh, the other Kaylee.
The other Kaylee that I was like, is it the same one? Nope, two different last names. And I chose her for a couple of reasons. One, Kaylee suggested her like over a year ago. And I was like, I mean, and I know people understand we only do serial killers once a year. Well, typically. But I was just like, well, it's one of the later ones. Let's just get it. Let's do it. And I've also already seen a documentary on her in the past. And so I was like, well, I kind of know this. So let me just make kind of an easier one to get started on because she was on that Worst Roommate Ever show, which you have seen too.
Yes.
That's over on Netflix. And she's the very first episode in that series. I don't know that they got very far into it, honestly. I don't remember.
I don't even know that I watched many, if any, episodes past hers. It wasn't my favorite.
No, it's not and maybe that's why I didn't make it. I think maybe they had like 4 or 3 and we watched them, but I have literally the only one I have a memory of is her.
Okay.
So clearly it didn't like stick with me. But anyway, it's a good, this episode was good because she's just an interesting person. So anyway.
Tell me all about her.
I just think it's funny to name it Worst Roommate Ever. And then when you find out what she did and you're like, crap, yeah, she's the worst roommate ever.
Yeah. Literally.
Anyways. I also watched a 2-part documentary called Murders at the Boarding House. And I got a lot of my information from that one.
Okay.
So Dorothea was born Dorothea Helen Gray on January 9th, 1929 in Redlands, California.
Capricorn.
Oh, okay. Fantastic.
I forgot to mention too, Kelly, my one from last week is a Gemini. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay. This doesn't mean anything to me. So
the people will know.
Okay. She was the 6th of 7 children to Trudy Mae Gray and Jesse James Gray.
Jesse
James Gray. Jesse was a cotton picker.
Oh.
Both of her parents were alcoholics, though. Her father had threatened to kill himself in front of the children multiple times and even tried to hang himself on one occasion.
Oh, so, no.
Not the best upbringing, just based on that. He ended up dying of tuberculosis in 1937, so she was only like, 8 years old. Her mother was a prostitute and would lose custody of her children and then die a year after their father passed, which was in 1938, in a motorcycle accident, which I don't know why, but when I first typed that up, it sounds stupid now. I'm like, there were motorcycles back then? Because I was just thinking like 1938, like really? They already had them? I don't know. Anyway.
I don't know. I mean, obviously.
Obviously, dumb Christy moment probably, but anyway. Okay. So I believe that they were all sent to live with relatives at first, but then they ended up in an orphanage where Dorothea was sexually abused.
Oh, no.
So, yes.
Oh, it is. I tell you, you always feel bad for the kid in them. It's such trauma.
Because honestly, would she have grown up to be the person she is had she not had all of these experiences as a young child?
Right.
She had like a stable upbringing and all that. Not to say that there are people who don't have, clearly last week is an example, stable upbringing.
Right.
But something in there just clicks and whatever. Yep. But a lot of these cases, I'm like, well, what if? So anyway, Dorothea would end up in Washington State. I don't really know how she got there, but she traveled up there and met Fred McFall.
Okay.
And got married for the first time in 1945 at the age of 16.
Okay.
She would have 2 children with Fred. The first child she sent to live with relatives, and the second one she placed up for adoption because she didn't want anything to do with having kids, apparently.
Well, okay.
I don't know. She also had 1 miscarriage during this marriage.
Oh, okay.
Fred would leave Dorothea in 1948. And that same year, she was arrested for using forged checks and was sentenced to 4 months in jail and 3 years probation.
Wow.
So,
why did he leave her?
It didn't say, but I want to say it's probably, well, no, I did see things. She's a pretty unstable person.
Okay.
And just like the ups and downs, people would just get sick because she was married more than once. You'll find out. And they all just end up walking away from her because it's like, what the hell?
Gotcha.
Okay. So then she moves to San Francisco, California, where she met a seaman, which is basically like somebody in the Navy, but they use the word seaman, which I know you can't handle right now.
I cannot.
Okay. Axel Bren. Yeah, you are a little bit.
Oh, 100%.
Certain words.
Yes.
His name was Axel Bren Johansson, and he was much older than her. They would get married in 1952, and Axel would be gone a lot of the time because he was a seaman. And Dorothea became a prostitute during those years and even started running her own brothel.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
An undercover officer would become a customer, and Dorothea would be arrested in 1960 and would spend 90 days in jail. And when she got out, she would drink a lot and try and hurt herself. And so Axel eventually had her committed for a short time in 1961. And while she was there, they diagnosed her as a pathological liar and had an unstable personality. Things went downhill for her after that, and her marriage.
After that, things were downhill.
Yes,
the whole working in a brothel,
Until this point, things were like on the up and up, and now go downhill. So,
oh gosh,
Axel and Dorothea would divorce in 1966. So he actually stuck around for quite a bit, but probably because he wasn't around her all that much because he was in the Navy.
Right.
She then moved to the Sacramento area and started to help people in need. She would become somewhat of a well-known philanthropist in the area.
What?
Yeah.
That's a turn.
It is a turn. Not really, but she would financially support organizations that helped children wanting to advance their education. And this is where she met Roberto Jose Puente.
Okay.
And married him in 1966. So not long after, within the year, she's married to someone else. Their marriage would only last 16 months.
Okay.
Apparently he was abusive. Well, there's not a whole lot out on that.
Okay.
In 1978, which I think I read somewhere where she tried to serve him divorce papers and then he fled to Mexico to avoid her. But anyway, it was a weird situation, but whatever. They end up getting divorced. In 1978, Dorothea was convicted of illegally cashing federal and state checks belonging to her tenants because she was running boarding houses for people who were homeless or were alcoholics and needed a place to stay. Anyway, so she
took their money.
She was taking their checks and forging them and cashing them illegally. So she was sentenced at that point to 5 years probation. So when you said she took a turn and like became a philanthropist, she was stealing from the poor to help the poor. Like, so yeah, she was helping people, but she was stealing from these poor innocent people also.
Yeah.
To do it. So in January, and only getting 5 years probation, because I guess they're like, well,
and it was not her first offense either.
Well, and that seemed to be a theme with her. Like, it was like the right hand wasn't talking to the left hand when things were happening. And I don't know, like, then, like, how, I mean, I guess it's like 70s. I don't know, like, how things translated in the system, you know? Who knows?
Yeah.
But she's still on probation. People are supposed to be checking on her. So,
right.
Anyway, in January of 1982, Dorothea met Malcolm Mackenzie at a bar, and the two went home together. He realized that he was starting to feel a bit strange, and then he kind of like went paralyzed. Like, so he was awake, he could hear things, he could see, but could not move his body.
Okay. But
he knew what Dorothea was doing in his house, and she was robbing him. She jewelry, money, whatever she could get her hands on, even like as his hand is dangling from the chair, like takes the ring off of his finger because he's paralyzed.
Oh my gosh, that is a nightmare.
Yeah.
How scary.
I know, because I see that in, what was that? Joe, that show, You.
Oh yeah.
Remember when that happened, when there was that one season that they did that to each other and like they could see and hear and know everything was happening and they're like, but cannot move.
Yeah.
It's always so weird to me. Okay. Anyway, so not long after this, she met a woman named Ruth Monroe. She's a pharmacist who had just lost her husband. Oh, so I'm sorry. I should have said he did call the police, she tried to like say it was like, oh no, he gave me all this stuff. Not, I didn't steal it or whatever. And there wasn't really much on like what happened to her on that case. But anyway.
Interesting.
So she meets Ruth Monroe. She's a pharmacist who had just lost her husband, and they became friends and decided to kind of move into a house together that Dorothea would then run as a boarding business. So same kind of the boarding house, same kind of thing. Ruth was just kind of a business partner with her.
Okay.
So they opened a joint bank account together to run this business. And after a short time, Ruth grew very ill. I think it was 82 that this happened, because I'm sorry, I said April. I'm about to say in April, of 1982, her son came to visit her and checked on her. And the next day, Ruth died.
Oh.
Dorothea told her and her whole family that Ruth had been very depressed for a while after the death of her husband, and she completed suicide. And the family kind of believed it because they did know that she was very upset about her husband dying and whatnot. And so,
but she was
depressed,
sick, though.
Yes. Yeah, but they did. Yeah, and they didn't know why, but it was an overdose. So they thought, well, she had already been doing that to herself, and so they believed it. They were like, this is not out of the realm of possibilities. So let's believe it. Plus, I don't know if you remember, but you see pictures of Dorothea Puente, and she's this little old lady. Like, she's not going to like lie to you. She's a nice little old lady. If you don't know all of her past, she's a nice little old lady. So
sociopathic.
Yeah. So when the autopsy was done, this revealed that she had high doses of acetaminophen, codeine, and a green substance in her stomach. The green substance was due to a drink that Dorothea had made Ruth almost every night before she went to bed, and it had cream de menthe in it.
Oh.
So is that
like a cocktail or a liqueur or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever had a grasshopper, or have I ever made grasshopper pie?
No.
It has cream de menthe in it. It's green, and that's why it's green. The pie is because of that green. It's just minty.
Okay.
In May of 1982, another woman, Dorothy Osborne, had Dorothea to her house because they were friends, and Dorothea made her a drink. And 8 hours later, Dorothy woke up to find checks, credit cards, and other items missing from her home.
Okay.
So we've got this pattern of let's drug someone and steal from them.
Yeah, she's a terrible thief.
Yes, she is. In July of 1982, Dorothea was charged with 5 felony charges for forgery, robbery, and theft. And she was sentenced to 5 years in prison. She was paroled in 1985 after only serving half of her sentence. And then she was on state parole until 1986 and federal until 1990. So the feds were on to her.
Okay.
As well.
Mm-hmm.
She was also cashing federal checks, like Social Security checks.
Right.
And stuff like
yeah.
that.
So. Bad.
She was diagnosed while in prison to be schizophrenic. And it was suggested that she be closely monitored when she was released.
Mm-hmm.
This does not, however, happen.
I was going to say, did the ball get dropped? I guess it did.
Oh, yes, it did.
Oh.
So after this conviction, Ruth Monroe's family went to the police thinking that, well, maybe Dorothea did something to Ruth, to our mom, like whatever, but they didn't really have any good real evidence to proceed with that. So it ended up getting dropped. Dorothea went on to continue to run the boarding house in Sacramento at 1426 F Street.
And wasn't that Ruth's house?
It was.
So
I don't really... Go ahead, sorry.
They think that she might have had something to do with their mom's death, but she's still living in the house?
Well, because they got the house together to run this boarding house. And they had a joint bank account and whatever, which was then emptied by Dorothea, but whatever. So it was, I guess, hers. So
okay, I gotcha. I thought it was Ruth's house and she'd moved in with her. I got it.
And she's not supposed to be running a boarding house, but she ends up doing it anyway. Parole officers are coming in and out, not asking questions. So I don't know if she's like hiding these people, like, or whatever. I don't know like how they missed all this, but anyway.
Okay.
So she's running this boarding house on F Street in Sacramento that housed mainly older people who were in poor health or they were alcoholics, same kind of people. Even though she specifically ordered not to be around vulnerable people. It's even reported that she changed her image at this point by letting her hair go completely gray, and then she started wearing vintage-looking clothing so that she looked much older than she really was.
To be the trustworthy little old lady.
Yes. Because, I mean, she just looks like this sweet little old lady, because whenever we watched... Emery and I both watched the documentary together, and I kept telling Emery every time they'd show a picture of her or a video of some sort of her, I'd say, she's 59 years old. The woman looked easily in the mid-70s, possibly low 80s. By the way she dressed and presented herself. And he was like, what? She's 59? I'm like, yeah. So anyway, she became a social worker's angel. They all knew who to call if they had someone who needed a home.
I see.
One of these social workers was Judy Moyes, I think, or Moyes. And in 1988, Judy was helping Bert Montoya, who was a disabled homeless man. He was a 52-year-old man who had the mental capacity of a 10 to 12-year-old.
Okay.
He was very sweet. They have videos of him, like her asking what kind of place he would like to live in. It was like, he just seemed very sweet.
Okay.
She had been working with him for a while and found him a place to live with Dorothea. After about 6 months, Dorothea had said that Bert didn't want to be there anymore and asked Judy if she could bring him to Mexico to visit a brother. It's very unclear because I feel like she said her brother, but I want to say it was really his brother that she was trying to get him to go reunite with or not. But anyways, it doesn't matter. Judy was like, no, that's not a good idea. I don't want you to bring him to Mexico. Don't do that. Just leave him where he is. I'll come check on him in a few days and whatever. So she would call to check in on Bert in the meantime, and he was never available to talk. Judy finally called her and said, I want to talk to Bert by this day, or I'm going to call the police and say, you need to investigate because I'm going to call him a missing person.
Okay.
And that's what Judy did because she was never able to produce Bert. So she called the police, concerned about his well-being, and they went out to Dorothea's home to check on him. Police officer John Cabrera on November 11th, 1988, went out to the home. He questioned Dorothea about Bert, and she said that Bert's nephew had come to pick him up on the past Sunday to go live with him. Right. The other tenants in the house said the same thing to the police, except one of the tenants passed a note to Officer Cabrera, and when he opened it, it said, she's making me lie.
Oh, she threatened them?
I guess. This tenant somehow gets to talk to Officer Cabrera by himself and informs him that nobody's seen Bert in 3 months.
Oh my gosh, 3 months?
Yeah. So this Sunday, somebody picking him up? No, we haven't seen him or heard from him in 3 months. So Judy had also mentioned that, because I'm sure at first she probably went out there in like the very beginning, but then clearly her work is done when she's found him at home. So like check in every now and then, but she's not going out. But she remembers that when she had gone out there one time, she had noticed that there was like a mound of dirt in the yard on a few occasions. And so she was like, well, you might want to check, because that was kind of weird, but I just thought she was gardening or whatever at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So Officer Cabrera asked Dorothea if it was okay if he searched her house. Can we look and make sure that Bert's nowhere in this house?
Mm-hmm.
She was like, yep, go ahead. On the second floor of the house was her like apartment. So that's where she stayed. And all the tenants stayed in like rooms in the rest of the apartment or the house.
Okay.
In that apartment, they found a bottle with blue pills in it with a prescription label with Dorothea's name on it. And they also found a couple of credit cards with the name Dorothy Miller on it. Which is that one lady that she had drugged and taken stuff from years ago. She told police at that point that was a relative that had stayed with her for a bit and was gone and like left them, and she just hasn't gotten them back to her yet. So,
he's a known thief.
Exactly.
Like, what are we doing, guys?
Right. Officer Cabrera in that moment does it, because it's not like everyone in the police department knows about her and like whatever. So in that moment he doesn't, but he's like taking note of what he's seeing.
Mm-hmm.
These are the answers she's giving him. So then Cabrera asks, would it be okay if I like dug a little bit in your yard just to check things out, make sure like I'm doing my due diligence to try and like appease Judy, because this is what Judy's telling me, blah, blah, blah. He just wants to cover all the bases and dig in a couple places, figuring he's going to uncover nothing and just know that he did what he needed to do. And she was like, sure, go ahead, go dig in my front yard.
Okay.
So they started to dig, and before too long, I think that she actually gave him the shovel to dig with too.
Okay.
They dug up
a nice, sweet old lady.
She is. She's like, can I get you anything to drink? You know,
like some lemonade.
Right. Yeah. May I make you an Arnold Palmer?
That's so psycho.
It is. It is. She is. She's freaking nuts. Really nuts. Okay. So not too long after they started digging, they dig up a piece of cloth, and then they find like a few pieces of leather. They're like, okay, well, that's not really anything to be concerned about. And then they hit something and they think it's a root. But as he continues to dig and pulls it out, it turns out when he pulls it out, he's like, oh, this is a human bone.
Stop.
Like it was a femur.
Why would she just let them dig?
Because she's an idiot.
Yeah.
He immediately calls the coroner to come out. He knew it wasn't Bert because of the amount of decomposition was too far along for it to be Bert.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So Officer Cabrera had also thought that this was an old house built in 1898 and that they very well could have buried loved ones in the yard back then. And so he wasn't necessarily being like, well, we can't say we're arresting you because we have to figure this out. We have to know what this is. So calls the coroner out.
And I'm assuming she's like, I had no idea that was there, sir.
Yep. Exactly. Bring her in for questioning. And there's her like interview is, you see parts of it in this documentary. And she's like, I don't know. I don't know who that is. I don't know when they got there. I had no idea that, because they were like, where are the other bodies? Are there other bodies? And she's like, well, I didn't even know about that one. So how would you expect me to tell you about other ones? Like she's very matter of fact and convincing. She's a sweet little old lady.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as part of procedure, like I said, they bring her back for questioning. And a tenant who had been living in her living quarters. Apparently there was one man, I think his name was John, that they thought there was a special relationship there.
Okay, a man friend.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so they brought him in also for questioning. Dorothea denies knowing anything about the bones in the yard, no idea who it is, how it got there. They questioned her about Bert, and she insists, I don't know where he is, and states like, I wish he would show up right now so that he could prove that he's fine and there's nothing to be concerned about. Dorothea also states that Puente is her birth name, which police know is not true.
Right.
And so they're just like letting her lie because the guy was like, the more we get her to lie, the more we can like nail her. So okay. But anyway, I don't know why she thought that she could get away with that. She's not even Dorothea Puente anymore because she had gotten married one more time to a Pedro Montalvo, but he left her after a week of marriage. So she just kept Puente or using Puente for like 20 years after or something.
Right.
Anyway, they questioned her for a while, but really didn't have anything to hold her on. So they needed to release her. They did come back to the house the next day and asked if they could continue digging in the yard, to, unearth whatever else rest of that body, I guess. Officer Cabrera stated that while they dug in her yard, Dorothea was inside throwing back some vodka OJs.
Wow, screwdriver-ing it up, huh? Okay.
Which makes me laugh. Like she's just like, what's going on?
Oh my gosh.
Okay. At some point, that other tenant that lived with her comes out and is like, hey, Dorothea wants to talk to you, whatever. So he goes inside and she's like, am I under arrest? And he's like, no, you're not under arrest, but we need to continue digging. And she said, well, this is all making me very nervous. And would it be okay if I go around the corner to the hotel, to the coffee shop and just sit and have some coffee there? And he was like, totally fine. He had no reason to like hold her there because they don't know where this body is coming from to begin with. So he walks her over to the hotel, drops her off, and then comes back to help with digging. And like 20 minutes after that, they hit another spot and find another body.
Oh my goodness.
Wrapped in a sheet. This time a female body.
Oh.
But when they searched, they had no reports of any like missing females in the area. So they had like, again, no clue who this could possibly be. So then they want to know, like, the rest of the police squad's like, all right, where's Dorothea? Now we've got body number 2. We've got to know where she is.
Right.
So they go to find her at the hotel.
Gone.
In the wind.
She dipped.
She did. The worker at the hotel said that she had walked in, made a phone call, and walked right out the door and got into a cab. So she didn't like waste any time once Cabrera dropped her.
She didn't take anything with her.
Nope, just her little purse and red jacket.
Wow.
Out.
Yeeted.
After Cabrera took a lot of heat for letting her get away, but again, there wasn't much he could hold her on. But they're like, well, now we're finding bodies, and she's gone. So anyway, they come out the next day and find that she had kind of dumped a lot of lime in the grave sites to try and mask odor and also to help decompose the bodies faster.
Which is not something you would do if you buried. Because if they're thinking like she said, I didn't bury them there, this might be a grave site, back in the olden days. Like, well, then they wouldn't have used lime.
No, you'd wrap them up, bury them, and leave them. Like,
right.
Or put them in a box. I mean,
I was going to say, how about that whole coffin thing? It's got to be regulated.
Yeah. I'd imagine. I'm like, anyway.
Right.
Yeah, there's got to be. Whatever. Okay. So the problem is that the lime actually helped preserve most of the bodies instead of decompose them. Not that that's a problem. That's actually a good thing. But on the third day of digging, they find now body number 3.
Oh my goodness.
Been put in the ground somewhat recently, and there were multiple layers covering this body. And there was a plastic bag over this person's head, which they end up surmising that this had been done because he had been alive when she put him in the ground.
Oh, that's awful.
And they do assume that this is Bert Montoya since it had been the most recent one that they had seen. So police decide to arrest John, the other tenant that was like living with her with the special privileges. And they were convinced, well, he had to have helped her. There's no way this little old lady has dragged these bodies out here, dug all these holes all by herself, and put them in the ground. So they're like, he's got to be part of this. So they arrest him because he's the only one there. And he's very uncooperative and ultimately is released after a few days because they didn't really have anything, any true evidence to hold him.
Right.
Police search the inside of the house as well. They find a driver's license with someone else's name on it and a large manila folder with many social security cards inside of it, checks and bank statements of all these different people. They also find a book that's called 150 Commonly Prescribed Pills, and this discusses all the drugs and all their side effects that they could have.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine being a person like living at the house at that time? And you think you have this like little old lady landlord who's helping you, and then all of a sudden these dead bodies are being found in the yard and she's really a murderer, and you're just like, I guess I should move.
I'm glad I wasn't one of those before.
Yeah,
like
literally.
Yeah. In one of the bedrooms, Officer Cabrera found an awful odor when he lifted the rug, and so he and all the police are thinking that this is where she kept the bodies, like so once they died, until she had a hole to put them in, and so their bodies would excrete fluids onto this like carpet, which so he called it like the death room or something like that.
Oh.
Anyway, people would mention the smell at times to her, and she would always blame, oh, it's an old house, we have drainage issues. Like she would just like bluff it off. Okay, so they managed to track down the cab driver that picked Dorothea up at the hotel, and he told police that he boarded a bus to Los Angeles. Well, I don't know if he knew that specifically. He dropped her off the bus station, saw her get on the bus, and I'm sure they then asked, like, okay, where's this lady? Like, where'd she go? So they find out she's on her way to Los Angeles. So that same day, they find body number 4 because they just keep on digging.
Oh my gosh.
Buried out by her shed, wrapped in a sheet. Police discover that Dorothea had up to 25 former tenants whose whereabouts are unknown. So they're like, because they're trying, they're like, well, who could these be? So they start like looking into it, and there's like 25 of them that have gone in and out that they're like, I don't know where they are now. So,
oh my gosh,
got our work cut out. We only have 4 bodies. So are we going to find that many more, or are we going to have to figure out who are these 25 these people are? So on day 4, they find body number 5 under like a patio, so like a concrete slab. That's wrapped in a bedsheet as well. Body number 6 is found somewhere else in that backyard. And so then they move, because it's not even a backyard. It's kind of like a side yard, the way it's positioned. But anyway, they then moved to like this small area in the front yard because they ran out of places to dig on that back side yard. And they find body number 7, who was seated was in a seated position, and their head, hands, and legs had been removed. So they didn't have any
seated position.
Yeah. So it was like the torso was like upright, but with no head and no legs. So it was like this, like the butt kind of, I guess.
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh.
Anyway.
Weird.
Yeah.
This is how did she bury all of these people with people living in her house and neighbors, and nobody ever saw, and it didn't stink?
Yeah. I mean, the lime, it was covering up the smell.
Oh.
In the garden for sure. Or garden. She does say she missed working in her garden. I honestly, so I don't know, and I don't remember if I put this in there or not, but it is speculated that she like was hiring ex-convicts to help her bury.
Oh.
Because it's never stated that John actually gets implicated in this and that he was helping her. She very could have. We actually don't know how she did all of this, to be honest with you. Police issue a be on the lookout for Dorothea in Southern California and at the border just in case she tries to cross. Investigators start to try and identify these bodies. So they find records of all the people who had been receiving checks at that address, and they narrow it down to 13 possible people, which is much better than their 25.
Okay.
In the end, they identify the bodies as Benjamin Fink, and they identified him because he had fingerprints in the system because he had a record. They identified Dorothy Miller, who was that friend who she stole from, and that's the license or whatever, or the credit card that was found in her house. And they identified her by fingerprints because she was in the military.
Okay.
She was a nurse in World War II and had become an alcoholic and disappeared from the VA hospital in Texas and somehow managed to find her way to California. Her family actually has no idea because when she disappeared from the VA hospital, they never figured out until she was identified as one of Dorothea's victims. Wow. They ID body number 3 as Bert, which was what they thought. The rest of the bodies were identified through x-rays. So body number 4 was Betty Palmer, and they identified her because she had a hip replacement surgery, and so they saw that in the X-ray. The one missing her head, hands, and legs was she was the one missing her head. Sorry. Betty Palmer.
Oh, okay.
Body number 5 was James Gallup, and he had brain surgery, and so they just saw in the X-rays that there had been surgery done. And body number 6 was Vera Martin, and it appeared that she may have been buried alive as well, based on stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Body number 7 was Leona Carpenter, who was the owner of the femur that they had found first. That first day. And the leather pieces that they found had turned out to be pieces of her flesh.
Oh.
Okay. Police issued another bolo for the bodies that matched the types of death, because they're like, well, she's been out here for a long time. So we've only found these, but is there a possibility that there's other victims elsewhere now that we are investigating her and we know that she shouldn't have been running this boarding house and she was doing these scams before? Was she just drugging them before and then leaving, or was she doing something similar like this? So they put out, hey, are there any cases out there anywhere here near us that could possibly be matching this kind of crime? So they do that. Anyway, the autopsies performed on all these victims revealed that every one of them had been poisoned. They all had a drug called Dalmane in them, which is a central nervous system depressant. And all of them had taken that within an hour of their death. So that's basically that paralyzing drug. So it got them to the point where they couldn't move, so she could get anything else in their system that she wanted, I guess.
Or bury them alive and there's nothing we can do. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. She had been prescribed this pill, which I, no matter what, have not seen why someone would be prescribed that pill. Unless you take it in such small doses that it's like a relaxant. I have no idea. But why somebody would have a prescription of that?
Right. Yeah.
I have no idea. But she had been prescribed this pill, and she had close to 1,000 tablets in her home that were either prescribed to her or stolen from someone else. Plus, what's her name from the beginning? Ruth was a pharmacist. So I half wonder if she was writing prescriptions to herself, maybe.
Oh,
So maybe she wasn't prescribed, but
right.
It seemed like she was. Anyway, since she had this book and she knew what it would do. Anyway, medical examiners reclassified Ruth Monroe's death as a homicide.
Okay, and she was the first one.
Well, yeah.
That we know of. Okay.
All the other bodies had substances in their system such as codeine, diazepam, flurazepam. I don't know how to say these next two, but they were very common in all of them. So it would maybe they didn't all have diazepam, but 3 of them did. And then 4 of them would have flurazepam, and they all had multiple things in their system, but they crossed over in one way or another. Police in another jurisdiction call Cabrera and tell them about a man who had been found in a wooden box in 1986 near Sacramento Bay. His name was Everson Gilmuth. He was an older gentleman from Oregon. So when they start looking into it, they realize that he had started to communicate with Dorothea while she was in prison in the earlier 1980s.
Okay.
And he traveled to visit her several times. And when she was released, he drove down and picked her up.
Is this one of those prison pen pal things?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
He was a lonely man.
Lady.
Yep. Yeah, he sure did. So he lived with her for a few weeks and then disappeared. And it was discovered that Dorothea at some point had hired a handyman to redo her floors. And while he was doing that, she said, hey, can I hire you to make me a large wooden box? I've got a whole lot of books that I need to pack up and put into storage, and I just need somewhere to put them.
Oh my gosh.
He does it. Poor Ishmael does it for her.
Yeah.
She fills it up and then tells him, hey, can you help me move this? Gets, I think, a neighbor and him. I don't know. It's very unclear, but somebody helps move this box that actually has Everson inside of it. And they think it's gold. So they get rid of this box. He was found and found to have died from similar causes as the other. So same kind of drugs in his system, whatever. So this now brings her body count to 9. On November 17th, 1988, a man So this is now November 11th is when we are first showing up at her house and knocking on the door. And then she disappears. So now we're now the 17th. A man runs into a woman at a bar in Southern California. He had recognized her from all the TV coverage because they were like, we're on the lookout for this lady. And he was like, oh my gosh, that's her. She's right here. So strikes up conversation with him. She's asking him lots of personal information about finances and blah, 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 blah. Like, are you on Social Security? Blah, blah, blah. Like, she's asking tons of questions. So she's like, hey, do you want to, come to my hotel room? And he's like, sure. So he's like, I'll do it.
Oh my gosh. Brave.
He called police and let them know where, like, I'll meet you there kind of situation. So she went to the hotel room. He calls police, says, hey, I think I've got your lady. This is the hotel she's staying in. This is her room number. And police roll up and arrest Dorothea Puente and escort her right back to the Sacramento area to face charges. Dorothea pled not guilty. Her trial would end up moving to Monterey, California, because they didn't think that she would get a fair trial in Sacramento. The prosecution had 130 witnesses testify against Dorothea.
Wow.
Like, I mean, all the people that maybe she came in contact with, I'm sure all of her parole officers, the people that were diagnosing her in prison, like everyone.
People in the boarding houses that lived with her probably had like, this was suspicious and, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Good. It's a whole village of people after you, Dorothea.
Exactly. There was a couple different numbers on the amount of money that she had cashed over the years. They were in the tens of thousands of dollars, like 50 to like 80 something thousand. I feel like it probably had to have been more, especially when she was like cashing and donating to those like charities and stuff like that. But
right.
I guess like just in the immediate past, this is what they had discovered, and that she had been killing people for like 6.5 years, essentially. When the jury went out to deliberate, there was one juror that was just not quite sure of her guilt, because how could this sweet little old lady
stop it
have done all of these heinous crimes?
113 people.
Yes.
That's
and
how.
One of you is holding out. What? Like, really?
Right.
Anyway. So they spent 3 weeks deliberating and were almost ready to declare like a deadlock jury. And I think maybe like the judge was like, hey, just go chat one more day, like go have more of a conversation. So they go, and the other jurors are able to convince that one juror that she had committed at least 3 of the murders.
Okay.
So they found her guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder of Dorothy Miller and Benjamin Fink, and 1 count of second-degree murder of Leona Martin. So she's only convicted of 3 of the 9.
Okay.
In the
that
penalty
makes
phase,
no sense whatsoever, though. Like, why would she kill those 3 and not the other 6? Like,
well, and that's what everyone said. Like, what? Clearly, these are all the same. They're done the same. They're all in her yard. Why are you saying that she only killed these 3? But anyway, it didn't matter to anybody because they were like, we're still convicting her. She's still going to jail forever. And
sure.
So whatever we can get, we can get. So in the penalty phase of the trial, she was facing the death penalty or life in prison due to her traumatic childhood and the fact that she seemed to be helping people that reminded her of her parents. But in reality, she had resentment towards them. So then she would kill and steal them from them. They sentenced her to life without the possibility of parole instead of the death penalty. She was sent to Central California's women's facility in Chowchilla. I like the name of that. Chowchilla. I don't even know if that's how you say it, but that's how I say it.
I think it is. Sounds familiar.
I mean, it looks like that's how it should be said. So she maintained public silence for 20 years and then granted a reporter an interview, which I read his whole, WordPress document on this. And I don't include a whole lot of information because, I don't know, it just was very sensationalized and it was fine. I mean, he got the interview. And so he has the right to write this whole big thing. But there was a lot of of his own commentary in there about what he thought of her. So anyway, she met with him. She maintained her innocence the whole time that he spoke to her and said that she had been set up. She did not commit any of these murders.
By who?
I don't think she said.
Oh.
The report stated that she showed no remorse when telling the story to him.
Right.
And he was like, I think she did it, but she literally is just like no effect on it about it whatsoever. So Dorothea ends up dying after 22 years in prison on March 27th, 2011 at the age of 82. Apparently of natural causes. I mean, she was 80. She had a lot of health issues in prison, which she loved sharing with this reporter that spoke to her.
Okay.
The house that these awful atrocities happened in is a historical landmark, and so it cannot be torn down like they do in most of these cases.
Oh my gosh. Why? Just because it's like
a historical
so
landmark. So it's like, yeah, I don't know what made it an historical landmark, but it already was. Oh. And so like, John Wayne Gacy's house, they tore down, it remained empty, and then they rebuilt on that property. But like this, they can't tear it down. So it just sat there because nobody wanted to live in it. Like they were like, well, these bodies were found in there.
Yeah.
So, anyways, sat vacant for a long time. And that is until a very eccentric, this was like the fun part of the research, I think.
Okay.
Very eccentric older couple came along in 2010. They had come to look at the house next door that was for sale, but noticed that one was on the market too, and it was much cheaper than the one next door. And so they were like, all right, well, let's look at it. So they inquire with their agent, and he was kind of like a little younger, on the younger side, so he wasn't like immediately aware of what had happened in that house. So he went in, got the MLS listing, dug a little bit into it, and when he sees the notes about it being the Puente house and where all of these bodies had been buried, he's like, "Ooh, Tom, Barbara, just so you know, this is what happened there." Well, Tom and Barbara are not fazed. They were like, "What? He's a true crime junkie." He's like, "Get out, really? Ooh, I want to live there now." Like,
no,
totally
literally get out.
Yeah.
No.
She said that or maybe they did. I don't know. He was married before. I don't think she was, but they were like older couple getting married. Anyway, I don't know if they owned a bookstore together or she owned it, but somebody, and they were like, "Oh, we always thought it was haunted." And I don't care. That didn't bother me. So it was like, people would think it was haunted too. And she's like, "It doesn't bother me if they're haunting this place, whatever, it'll be fine." Anyway, So those two, very eccentric. They are very funny people, but okay. So they love the fact that it had an apartment in it, that second floor apartment, because Barbara wanted to bring her mom to come live with them anyway, because she was getting older. And so it was like just set up perfectly. So they were like, all right, we're buying it. We're going to try and fix this up, and we're going to make people forget about what happened here.
Okay.
That never happened.
Yeah, we're still talking about it.
Yeah. People always stop to look. Tours stop by, like a walking tour, and there'll just be people standing across the street, and they're like telling them about it and whatever. Yeah. The two decide, fine, we can't get them to forget. We're going to lean in on this.
I was just going to say, they leaned in.
So they start decorating differently. Now, be warned, some of you are going to be offended by some of the stuff that I'm saying. Because even Emery was like, "Oh, that's tasteless," and whatever. And they fully admit that sometimes they've gone overboard. But they're like, we're not meaning any disrespect to anyone. But that's what Emery thought at first when I was telling them. But anyways, okay. So they have a mannequin dressed in the like red iconic jacket that that Dorothea was in outside, and she's holding a shovel. And she has a little purse with getaway money in it. That is AKA Monopoly money.
Oh my God.
Pull it out. Here's money.
What?
They have a few signs that say, "It was the awful, awful woman who did it. Don't blame me. Signed the house."
Okay. Well, that's kind of funny.
It is funny. Another sign states, "Trespassers will be drugged and buried in the yard."
Oh my.
That's the first one that I was like, people are going to be a little upset by this.
Yeah.
People loved it that would come by. They loved it, including Officer Cabrera, who went to see it because they had 2 tours done. One was the Historical Society, because they're a landmark, wanted to add it in. Now that somebody had moved in, had redone it, they wanted to add it in so people could go in and see. So he bought a ticket and went in to look at what it was. And he loved that they had taken it, spun it around, and changed the image in a way. The other tour was they charged people admittance to come see it, and all the money went to the Francis House Center, and this was for homeless people, and they stated that it was a jab at Dorothea as they were helping the people she was supposedly trying to help but not.
Right.
So they have added recently a QR code to the outside of the home, which takes you to a 12-minute video that is called The House. The House is Innocent.
Okay.
And it has interviews with Tom, Barbara, Officer Cabrera, and lots of footage of the house and why they choose to fix it up the way they did. And it is very well done. I'm going to link it in the show notes because you've got to watch it.
I am.
Watching that is what turned Emery's mind around of them being like, oh, this is disrespectful.
Okay.
And they even said there's been like 2 people that have come in and have been pissed about it. But overall, and they said that they felt like the decorations had run their course at some point, and so they decided to take everything down and change it, and people were mad. And so they took it back out and redecorated it the way it was, and that's just the way it is. But they are very interesting people, and I think they're lovely. And it's great that they were able to like find happiness in here. And anyways,
yeah. It isn't the house's fault. I agree.
No.
However, no. For me, it's a no. Yeah. Also, we're talking about it being haunted. Doing that, like sensationalizing these people's death. Now it's definitely going to be haunted. Like at least one of them's coming back for that. I would be terrified. If I wasn't terrified already, I certainly wouldn't be like upsetting that energy.
Yeah.
You know,
see, my mind doesn't go there. I mean, you have that different like spiritual like energy kind of thing where you're like saging now after all these stories. You're going to really sage now because you don't want people coming after you listening to this story.
That's right. I do not mess with the dead.
Yeah. So, but anyway, there's the story of Dorothea Puente, and now the current story of the house that still stands and is being lived in by a nice older couple.
That's just fine. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
So
I don't know that I think it would depend on what truly happened. That maybe not. I don't know that I would live there.
No.
It's a fun looking house. It's like cute.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for diving in. She definitely was the worst roommate ever, for sure. And I did watch that episode, but obviously it's a short episode, so there was so much that I did not know about old Dorothea, who totally ruined the name Dorothea.
Yeah, I know.
Which is a crime in itself.
Yeah, I don't really know that I've heard of the name since. Like,
I know.
Dorothy, but not Dorothea.
Well, anyways, thank you so much for that. Thank you to Kaylee for sending that in and being ever so patient while we covered it. I'm telling you, we're halfway done.
We are.
Look at that. Halfway done. Yeah. And I'm telling you, these females, they are so interesting because I think I mentioned this last week, but like, the motives are so different in females than in males. And so like, I guess she would kill people for money.
Yeah.
That was what they said her motive was, is like,
well, yeah,
but she just like it.
Well, it was partially for money, but they were also saying like how it was like, they were all kind of people that were like her parents. You know, like some of them were alcoholics and that's why they were homeless or whatever, or like became alcoholics because they were in the military and, you know, they come back and they're not. Right. And so it was like, she was helping people like her parents, but still had resentment towards them and was like, no. Yeah. I'm gonna kill you. Yeah. But I think a lot of it was money driven. Like she could just live in this house and steal everyone's money and act like a little
buy her
old
red
lady.
Coats.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's terrible. And it's really gross to like make people who are like victimize people who are already victims of something, substance abuse or the system or poverty or whatever, you know, like mental illness. Like it's just,
I know.
Can't do it. Can't do it.
It's despicable.
Absolutely.
For
yes.
Sure.
Very despicable, Dorothy. There you go.
Gave her a new name.
That's right. Okay, well, we hope you guys are enjoying Serial Killer September. Do not forget that we have survivors happening over on Patreon, and those are really interesting too. So if you have considered joining and never have, this is a great month for you to just spend $3 and give it a try. We certainly love all of the faces that we see over there. So, think about that and come find us on social media and interact and let us know how you guys are enjoying Serial Killer September. And tell your friends about us. Again, it's a great month to bring other people into the closet and just kind of show them, they're so sensational, these serial killers. People really love them. I mean, like, they love that tour and like the kind of rude things that people put up. It's like, people love it. We eat it up as a population. Yeah. It's a phenomenon. So yeah, it's always our greatest compliment when you tell your friends about us and then they actually like us. That's also fun. So yep, that's it. We'll see you next week for another serial killer lady. And always remember, the world is scary. People suck, especially serial killers. Hide in your closet.